let's look a little bit at the history, because the attachment styles were studied by Bowlby in the 1950s. He decided to study the behavior of infants, how they relate to their caregivers, and how it develops the mind and behavior, which is what we've been talking about. And he noticed that when they were separated from their caregiver, they would get distressed. And especially if a stranger's presence was there instead in a very unfamiliar place. And I mean, you'll find this in animals too. It's not something that is unusual. So he wanted to look at how they dealt with stress, loss, and separation. And he created the childhood attachment theory, which one of his colleagues, Mary Ainsworth, took much further. And so in developmental psychology, they had a series of experiments known as a strange situation. So they would see, the mother would leave the child in a room, and they'd have a series of scenarios and configurations. And with the stranger, they're completely alone. With the stranger after they join the mother, and then the child, and then leave again. So there were a number of things that they did. And what they found was that there were about 3 attachment styles. The first is the secure one. So this is where the infant shows distress upon separation, which is natural. They're not ready for it. But they sought comfort and were easily comforted when their parents returned. The anxious resistant attachment, which they found less of. But again, when you're doing an experiment, sometimes there's self-selection. We always have to look at the limitation. Right. And this is outside of the family, outside of the home. So we're looking at something that is introduced. So anxious resistant is basically much higher levels of distress, unable to regulate well. And then when they reunited, they both seeked comfort, but then they attempted to punish the parents for leaving. That's anxious resistant. And the avoidant showed no stress or minimal stress upon separation, and they either ignored the parents after reuniting or avoided them altogether. They added a 4th attachment style, which is the disorganized, disoriented attachment style, where children have no predictable pattern of attachment at all. So looking at these and keeping in mind that this is a framework, it's a theory. So our children are not theories, they're beings. Right. I really want to stress that. It's really important. It's good to have knowledge and information. It gives us an understanding and perhaps a baseline or a foundational piece to understanding infants more, but at the same time, they're beings. They're not unidimensional, right. Multidimensional. So in adulthood, this is what you might see. Secure attachment, they're satisfied in their relationships, feel secure and connected to their partners, and without feeling the need to be together all the time. Their relationships are likely based on support, independence, being honest. They're safe. Basically, it's all about safety and security. That is the bottom line, the bid for safety and security. Dismissive avoidant or anxious avoidant, they generally keep their distance from others. It's not safe, can't be trusted. They feel they don't need human connection to survive and thrive. And they insist on their independence and isolation from others. And these are they often able to shut down emotionally when the potentially hurtful scenario arises. That's how they deal with it. Or if there's, for example, if there's a threat of the continuance of the relationship, they will do that. They'll shut down. Or there's a serious argument, they'll shut down. So the anxious, preoccupied, or resistant attachment, they have less secure bonds. They feel desperate for love or affection and feel that their partner must complete them to fix their problems. So they long for safety and security, which is what we've been talking about. But at the same time, they act in ways to push the partner away. So it's what they really want, but they are not going to act in ways that will invite that. They sometimes can be labeled, unfortunately, as clingy, demanding, jealous, or easily upset by small issues. And the fearful avoidant, we've already talked about a little bit, but they generally try and avoid their feelings altogether because they just cannot find meaning, they can't put them into place. And they suffer from unpredictable, abrupt mood swings, fear of getting hurt by the romantic partner, and fearful of getting too close because they could get hurt. It's difficult to maintain healthy and meaningful relationships with others in this particular attachment style. Now, there's something I also want to say is that we're not one or the other all of the time. Being multidimensional beings means we could have a majority of one particular attachment, but have others depending on who we're with. So what's important to know, it's not a personality, it's how we respond in relationship.